Hello and welcome to this video tutorial on the ancient Greek alphabet. So before we can get stuck in with the Greek language, first of all we have to learn its alphabet. And if you've ever studied Russian before, the Greek alphabet is very similar to the Cyrillic alphabet. But if you haven't, then you're just going to have to learn it from scratch, unfortunately. So let's get stuck in. The Greek alphabet has 24 letters in it, and I've sorted them into a load of different categories to help you learn them. I'm going to tell you the names of them. I'm going to draw some of them out for you. I'm going to tell you how they sound. But other than that, it's up to you to be able to learn them. And it's essential that you learn them to move on in ancient Greek. But when you do, it's really rewarding. So let's start with the vowels. Now, in ancient Greek and in the modern Greek alphabet, they're the same thing, but there are a couple of extra features in the ancient Greek alphabet and different sounds. In ancient Greek, there are 7 vowels. Two of them are new, 2 of them you won't have in English, but the first 5 are pretty standard. And also they're exactly the same pretty much in Greek as they are in English. So we start off with alpha, which obviously is A, and this has an A sound, so like in cat. We then have epsilon, which is E, and that has an E sound, like in get. Then we have iota, which has an I sound, like in bin. Then we have Omicron, which, yeah, you guessed it, has an O sound, like in pot. And then we have upsilon, which has a slightly different capital letter. It looks like a Y, but its lowercase letter is just like a U. Upsilon. And it is like an or an I personally pronounce it like an like in push, but others pronounce it like an and it just depends what sounds right for you. So we have I, o, and or and they are all short vowels. So there's no lengthening them. They're just exactly what they are. They're pretty much the same as in English, and they're quite easy to get. I should just say that the Greek alphabet and the Greek system of pronunciation, you pronounce every single letter. So unlike in English, where we have a load of words from French and a load of words from German and a load of words from elsewhere, where we pronounce things slightly differently, in Greek, they're all pretty much pronounced sort of phonetically, every letter for every letter. Now, I said that we have 7 vowels, and that's right, we have 5 here, but we also have long forms of epsilon and omicron. So like I said, these are all short, a, e, o, and but the Greeks also have long forms for epsilon and omicron. So for epsilon, the long form is eta, and that looks like an H in the capital and an N with a long tail in the lowercase. It's spelt like that, and its pronunciation is slightly different. It's not. It's a common misconception that people pronounce this as E, like in meat, or they pronounce it like A, like a sort of E acute accent in French, but it's not. It has a sound like the word air. It's basically what you get if you sort of prolong this sound. So air. So it becomes air. It's a slightly strange sound when you first come across it, and I realised I sounded a little bit silly when saying it, but this is long epsilon, it's eta. You also have omicron. Micron is Greek for small, so obviously we want an O. Omega. That's capital omega, and that's lowercase omega, like a W, which I'm sure you've seen before. And this is not, again, this isn't pronounced like O, like some people say it is, but instead it's pronounced like or, like the or in raw. Again, O becomes or. So strictly in Greek, you would pronounce it as omega, but in English, we tend to pronounce it as omega, whatever. So those are our 7 vowel sounds. We've got alpha, a, epsilon, e, iota, I, omicron, o, upsilon, eta, air, omega, or. And those are our 7 vowels. Before we move on, there's just one sort of quirk of vowels in Greek. In English, we have the letter H, and this signifies an aspirated vowel, so like a H. In Greek, there is no such letter as H, and instead they express that same sound by using something called breathing. There are 2 types of breathing in Greek. You have smooth breathing, which looks like, let's just take an alpha, and a smooth breathing would look like that, with a sort of apostrophe going backwards, and that's just a. But the one to look out for is a rough breathing, which has an apostrophe going the other way. And that just simply signifies that you put a h before it. So this would be a, and this would be ha. In lowercase letters, the apostrophe goes above. In uppercase letters, the apostrophe, I don't know what happened there. The apostrophe goes, let me get my colour back. The apostrophe goes before the capital letter. So there are our vowels. What I'm going to do is I'm going to clear the screen, and I'm going to put our vowels just in lowercase up in the top left-hand corner, just so we can remember them if we need to use them later. Upsilon, eta, omega. I'm not putting these in the right order for the time being, I'm just doing them in the order that we learned them. So there are our vowels. Let's move on to consonants now. And again, like with vowels, there are some consonants which are exactly the same in Greek. So the first one, you guessed it, is beta, and that has a b sound, obviously. The second one looks a little bit different, but most people can guess that that's a d, that's a delta. It's a d sound. Then we have kappa, which is a k sound. It's always a hard k. There's no like soft c in Greek. It's just k. And then you have tor, or tau or tor or whatever, and that is like that. Those are easy consonants. They are easy to learn because they look exactly like their English counterparts and they have exactly the same sounds. So we have those. Let's change colour and let's go to another group of consonants, which I'm calling new consonants. These are ones which look completely different. They represent the same sounds that we have in English, but they look very, very different to what we have. So the first one is gamma. Before we move on, I'd just like to point out, this is a real pet peeve of mine. There is no loop in the base of a gamma. Modern Greek sometimes has it, sometimes you do it by accident because it's quite a strange movement to make, but mathematicians who draw gammas like that really, really annoy me. That is not how you draw a gamma. So gamma is g, you then have lambda, which is a L sound, it's an L. You might remember from 300 that this capital L is on the shield of the Spartans. That's because in Greek, Spartans were called Lacedaemonians, so Lacedaemonians, you know, the L there. We then have mu, which is an M, and that looks sort of like an M in the lowercase, but I've said that that's a new letter because the capitals are much rarer in Greek. And then you have one that most people who've ever paid attention in one maths lesson will be aware of, that's pi, and that represents a p sound, that's p. So we've got beta, b, delta, d, kappa, k, tor, t. Then we've got gamma, g, lambda, l, mu, m, and pi, p. So we've got all of those. Next, we've got a special sort of letter in Greek. It's special because it has three forms. So you'll notice that I'm writing the uppercase followed by the lowercase one. In Greek, there is one letter which has three forms. I'm not quite sure why that is, but it's sigma. So the capital sigma, which again mathematicians will know as the sum notation, then you've got lowercase sigma, and then you've got something called final sigma. As the name suggests, final sigma is only used at the end of a sentence. So if we take the letters that we've got already, we can create a Greek word. Let's see if I can find one. Okay, so we can create a Greek word. We can create, let's say, belos, B-E-L-O-S, and we're using the final sigma there. Okay, because it's at the end of the sentence. This is compared to a word like I'm trying to think of one using the letters we've got already. I tell you what, we'll come back to that use of the middle sigma when we've got better words, because there's one word that I'm thinking of, but it uses a letter we haven't learned yet. But as you can see, that sigma's right at the end, and so it changes form. And this is a word belos, which means javelin. So let's get rid of all of that because that's taking up our space. Let's go to our false friends. Now, this is a tricky category because they're letters that look like other letters in English, but aren't actually those letters. So if I were to write this lowercase letter, most people would probably think that it was a V, but it's not. There is no V sound in Greek. This is its capital, and its name is nu, and so its sound is N. Okay, nu is N. We've then got this letter, which looks like a P. Notice that there's no sort of backstalk, and I draw it from the bottom, but in actual fact, this is rho, and this is a R sound. Just a very quick point, if you remember that for all of the vowels, if I wanted to make it a rough breathing, so if I wanted to have it ha, I'd always put that comma over the top. Rho, if it starts a word, always has a rough breathing, because the Greeks, for some reason, thought that r always had an aspirate bit. So that's just something to remember there. Those are our two false friends in Greek, so just be on the lookout. This is not a v and this is not a p. They are nu, n, and rho, r, respectively. We then have our final category, and this is a new concept. These are called double or combination consonants. And what they are is, as the name suggests, they're two consonants that are separate in English that the Greeks combined. And I'll show you what I mean. So we've got, the first one is Theta. Okay. And in English, you might be saying, well, that's not a double consonant, that's just a z sound, that's its own sound. But in Greek, in ancient Greek, this is pronounced as ds. It's a zd sound. If we have a Greek word like zdaor, it's not zaor, it's zda, zd. It's a sd sound. So just be careful with that because a lot of textbooks just say it's z. There's a book, it's by W. Sidney Allen, it's called Vox Graeca, and it looks at this and it concludes that it is an S and a D. And there are several reasons for that. If you ever study ancient Greek poetry, you'll see what I mean. But that's a zd sound. We then have this sort of strange looking capital letter, and then we have its lowercase form. In fact, I very badly drew that, so let's try that again. And that is far too big. That should be better. And I've lost my colour. God. Let's try this one more time. That's better. This is xi. Okay, and again, we don't pronounce the X as a Z in English. We say it xa. It's a combination of K and S. In fact, I'm going to write this. So it's an S and a... You see, I am not an expert on a tablet, and I need to get much better at using this. So zeta is st, zd. Xi is a K and an S. We've then got this, which looks like Neptune's trident, or in Greek he is Poseidon, which is a way to remember that it is psi, and that's P and S. We then have this, which again scientists and mathematicians may know, and this is phi, which is P and H, so it approximates an F sound. Let's move back up here. We've then got chi, which is an odd sound. It's most described as K and H, but the way you pronounce it is a bit like loch in Scots. It is that sort of at the back of the throat kind of ch sound. It's a difficult one, but it's like a Greek word is like chalkeos, which means bronze. So ch. And then the final one that again, anybody who's ever suffered a lesson on trigonometry would know is theta, and I've badly drawn that again. Theta. And that is TH. So we have our 24 letters. We have our vowels, alpha, epsilon, iota, omicron, upsilon, eta, omega. Then we've got our consonants, beta, b, delta, d, kappa, k, tau, t, gamma, g, lambda, l, mu, m, pi, p, nu, n, rho, r, sigma, which has its three forms, s, and then we have our double consonants. We've got zeta, zd, xi, xa, psi, ps, phi, th, chi, k, theta, t, or th. That's an interesting point with this one actually. For this theta, the combination th in Greek is how we write it in English, but the sound was more approximately a t sound, which is kind of a mixture between the two. But I wouldn't worry too much about that. So these are our 24 letters. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to clear this page, and instead we're going to write them out in their correct order. So let's switch back to white. We have alpha, beta, gamma, delta, epsilon, zeta, eta, theta, iota, kappa, lambda, mu, nu, xi, omicron, rho, sigma, tau, upsilon, phi, chi, psi, omega. And omega comes last, alpha comes first, alpha and omega, all of that. There are our 24 letters. So with those in mind, and what I'll do is I'll write their approximants next to each other. What we'll do while I'm doing that is after I've written this, I am going to write some words out on the side just to sort of test our new knowledge of the Greek alphabet. So just bear with me 1 second. Excellent. So let's change colour. And now let's write out some words. So first of all, let's just go for some English words. So if I were to write this word, then we'd have capital Delta, Omicron, Gamma. That would be dog. If we were to write out another English word, well, that's quite easy. You can almost see it, can't you? That is cat. Notice that K always represents this hard sound. There is no sort of C equivalent. If we were to go for a more difficult English word, if we were to go for, let's go for, now you'd read this, let's put that breathing, because remember rows that start words always have to have a rough breathing. Take a look at that, have a think. Let's break it down. We've got ro, we've got r, we've got this or, b, o, t. This says robot, which I suppose if you're from up north, that sounds normal, but I would say it as robot, but there's no O equivalent, so we just use a long Omicron. So now let's go to some Greek words. And I know that you won't know what these mean to start with, but it's good to get to grips with good Greek. If I write this one out, have a go at reading that. We've got delta, omicron, epsilon, lambda, omicron, and sigma. So we've got doulos. This O and U, this is called a diphthong, which is a combination of vowels, and an Omicron and upsilon make an oo sound, like in boo. And this is Greek for slave. If we have this word, we've got an iota, but it's got a rough breathing. Remember, the rough breathing goes to the right, so that's hi. Then we've got p, o, s, hippos, which is Greek for horse, like in hippopotamus. And then there we are. So what we'll do is we'll use one last word. So we've got pi, p, alpha, a, upsilon, a, omega, or. But this is another diphthong, a and a, and that is pronounced like the English ow. So we have power, which means stop, or technically I stop. And the word pause is related to this. But there we go. We've had 3 words that we've transliterated from English, and we've got 3 Greek words that we're going to revisit in future videos. So we've got doulos, which is slave, hippos, which is horse, and power, which is I stop. And we'll go over those in the next videos on nouns and an introduction to verbs. But there is our Greek alphabet. If there are any more questions about the Greek alphabet, ask them in the comments. If you found this useful, tell me so in the comments. Maybe like this video. Please subscribe to the channel to keep up to date with future videos, future tutorials on Greek and Latin, and discussions on classical topics. And I hope this has been of some use.